The morning of the wedding, the Hartwell estate was already moving like a small city. Florists arriving in white vans before sunrise, valets practicing their lines on the gravel drive, a string quartet rehearsing in the East Garden where the chairs had been arranged in 7 perfect rows facing the stone arch. 240 guests were expected by 4 in the afternoon. Senators, 2 former ambassadors, the chairman of a bank Maya had never heard of, and a great many women in pale dresses who had been calling each other for weeks about what to wear so as not to be photographed in the same color. Maya Ellison was 9 years old, and she had been at the estate since 5:30 in the morning because her mother, Janelle, was the lead pastry chef the wedding planner had hired 3 months ago after the previous one quit. Janelle had not slept properly in 2 weeks. She had baked 700 individual lemon and lavender tarts the night before, by hand, in a rented commercial kitchen 40 minutes away, and now the trays sat in cooled racks behind the catering tent waiting to be plated. Maya had helped pipe the cream onto the last 100 of them at 1 in the morning, sitting on a stool with her legs not quite reaching the floor, because her mother had said quietly, "I won't make it, baby. Help me." And Maya had said, "Okay," the way she always said okay when her mother needed her, which was often because it had been Maya and her mother for as long as Maya could remember, and the two of them had a way of holding each other up that did not require explaining. If this story already has you leaning in, hit that like button and subscribe to Bound Hearts. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. She didn't hesitate for a second. Let's see if you could stay with her all the way to the end. Maya was not supposed to be on the main lawn. She was supposed to stay in the catering tent, helping her mother arrange the silver trays, fetching the small jars of edible gold leaf, doing the quiet work that nobody noticed. But at 6:40 in the morning, her mother had looked at her and said, "Go walk for 10 minutes. Get some air. You've been up since the middle of the night." And Maya had walked because her mother had asked her to, and because she had learned a long time ago that the world looked different when you moved through it slowly with your eyes open. That was how she ended up by the rose hedge that bordered the south terrace, half hidden behind a tall planter of white peonies, when the woman in the silk robe came out onto the terrace with her phone pressed to her ear. The woman did not see Maya. People rarely saw Maya. She was a small black girl in a clean apron with her hair in 2 careful braids her mother had done while standing up at the kitchen counter, and the kind of people who attended weddings at the Hartwell estate had a way of looking past girls like her without registering they had looked at all. The woman on the terrace was the bride. Maya had seen her photograph in the briefing folder the wedding planner had given her mother. Vivian Cole, age 32, marrying Mr. Adrian Hartwell at 4 o'clock, allergic to shellfish, prefers her tea with 1 sugar, no honey. In the photograph, Vivian had been smiling the kind of smile that looked good in magazines. In person, on the terrace at 6:43 in the morning with her hair still in pins and her face, without makeup, she looked like a different person. Sharper. Awake in a way the photograph had not been. "He doesn't know anything," Vivian was saying into the phone. Her voice was low but precise, the voice of a person who had said the same thing many times before to the same listener. "Adrian is exactly what he looks like. He is sentimental, and he is rich, and he is so desperate to be loved that he will sign whatever I put in front of him. Stop worrying." Maya did not move. She had been still since before the woman walked out, and now she became more still, the kind of stillness her grandmother had once taught her when a wasp landed on her arm in church. "Don't move, baby. Don't even breathe big. Just wait. The prenup is already signed," Vivian continued. "His lawyer made him sign one. I made sure mine looks reasonable. But the joint accounts open the day after the ceremony, and the foundation paperwork. Yes, the foundation, the one for the school in Newark. The foundation paperwork goes through next Tuesday. He's the one signing. I'm just listed as a co-trustee. The transfers happen automatically on the schedule we already set up." She laughed, a short, dry laugh that did not sound at all like the laugh in the wedding videos Maya had watched her mother rehearse the timing to. No, he is not going to look at it. He hasn't looked at anything I've handed him in 8 months. He trusts me. That's the whole point." Maya understood about half of the words. She was 9. She did not know what a co-trustee was, or how a foundation worked, or what it meant for transfers to happen automatically on a schedule. But she understood with the clean, unshakable understanding of a child who had been raised by a woman who had been cheated by men, that the woman on the terrace was lying about loving the man she was about to marry, and that the lie had a shape, and the shape had pieces, and those pieces were going to do something to a man who did not know they were coming for him. She also understood, very specifically, that the woman had said the word Newark. Maya's mother had grown up in Newark. Maya knew the streets. Maya had been told, last spring, that there was a billionaire who had announced he was funding a new school in the neighborhood her mother had left at 17, and her mother had cried at the kitchen table when she read the article, and had said, "Somebody is finally seeing us, baby. Somebody finally is." The man funding the school was Adrian Hartwell. Maya did not move from behind the peonies until Vivian had finished her phone call, said, "I have to go. They're coming to do my hair," and walked back inside, the silk robe whispering across the flagstones. Then Maya stood up slowly, brushed the gravel off her knees, and walked back to the catering tent the long way around, past the chairs the staff had not finished setting up, past the arch where the string quartet was tuning, past the long white runner that had been laid down the center aisle and was already being smoothed flat by a woman with a small lint roller. By the time she reached the tent, she had decided two things. The first was that she could not tell her mother yet, because her mother had been hired to do a job, and her mother would lose that job and the next 3 jobs the wedding planner could blacklist her from if Maya said one word about what she had heard and was wrong. The second was that she was not wrong, but she had to be sure first, because adults did not believe children unless children gave them a reason no adult could argue with. Maya had learned this the way most children learn it, by being right too many times in a row about things adults wish she had not noticed. So when she walked back into the tent and her mother said, "There you are. Did you get some air?" Maya nodded and said, "Yes, Mama," and picked up the small spatula and went back to plating the lemon and lavender tarts because there were still 400 of them to go and the guests would start arriving in 7 hours. But while she plated, she watched. Adrian Hartwell was 41 years old, and he had not slept well in 3 weeks. He told himself it was the wedding. He told himself it was the foundation paperwork, the new school groundbreaking he had pushed up to August because he wanted to be there in person, and Vivian had said August was too soon, and he had said August anyway. He told himself it was the new acquisition his board was nervous about. He told himself many things, the way men of a certain age and a certain bank balance tell themselves things, and most of those things were not the real reason he had been waking at 4 in the morning with a feeling in his chest like a door he had forgotten to lock. The real reason was that something about Vivian had been changing, and he could not say what. When he had met her 2 years ago, she had been a junior gallery curator at an art fair in Basel, and she had walked up to him and said, "You don't actually like the painting you're looking at. You're standing there because you think you're supposed to want it." And he had laughed because she had been right, and because no one had spoken to him that directly in years. The people in his life all wanted something. Vivian, it had seemed, wanted to tell him the truth. That was what he had fallen in love with, the feeling of being seen by someone who did not need anything from him. It had taken him almost 2 years to understand that being seen and being studied were not the same thing. He did not understand it yet. He stood in the master suite at 6:55 in the morning, knotting his tie in front of the mirror, and what he felt was a low buzz under his ribs that he kept misnaming as nerves. He was getting married today. Of course he was nervous. That was the right thing to feel. He told himself this and tightened the knot and looked at his own face and did not quite recognize the man looking back. His phone buzzed. A message from his lawyer, Daniel Mercer. Final foundation docs ready for signature Tuesday. V is listed as co-trustee per your request, confirming you reviewed last revision. Adrian had not reviewed the last revision. Vivian had handed him the folder 6 days ago and said, "Daniel sent these over. They're the same as before, just cleaned up. Just sign where the tabs are." And he had signed where the tabs were because Vivian had said the words "just sign where the tabs are," and because some part of him had stopped reading the documents Vivian handed him sometime in the last 8 months without noticing exactly when. He typed back, confirmed. "See you Tuesday." He set the phone face down on the dresser and adjusted his tie one more time. In the kitchen of the catering tent, 300 yards from the master suite, Maya Ellison was watching the bride's personal assistant, a thin woman named Kira, who was the only person Vivian had brought with her from her old life, walk past the tent with a clipboard, count the rows of tarts, and walk away again without speaking to anyone. Kira had been on the phone the whole time. The phone she was using was not her work phone. Maya had noticed that 2 days ago, when she had been helping her mother carry boxes from the parking area, and Kira had stood by the gardener's shed, holding a small black phone Maya had never seen her use indoors. Maya did not know what that meant, but she had filed it the way she filed everything, the way her grandmother had taught her. You don't need to understand a thing to remember it, baby. You just remember it. The understanding comes later. By 11 in the morning, Maya had filed 3 more things. She had filed that Vivian had been on the South Terrace at 6:40 in the morning, alone, on a phone that was not the phone she usually carried. She had filed that Kira had been on the same kind of phone an hour later, walking the perimeter of the property along the rose hedge, her voice too low to hear, but her face moving in small, intent ways. And she had filed that one of the wedding photographers, a man named Lyndon who had been hired for the engagement shoot last September and had now been brought back for the wedding, had hugged Vivian when he arrived at 9:30, and that the hug had lasted slightly longer than the kind of hug a photographer hugs a bride, and that Vivian had kept one hand at the small of his back for half a second after the hug should have ended. None of these things by themselves was anything. Maya knew that. A 9-year-old girl who told an adult that the bride had hugged the photographer for too long would be told to mind her business and go help her mother. Maya was not going to make that mistake. She needed to find the billionaire. The first time Maya tried to get Adrian Hartwell, it was 11:20 in the morning, and he was walking from the main house to the carriage house with 2 men in dark suits, neither of whom was speaking. Maya stepped out from beside the catering tent with a folded napkin in her hand. She had folded it 3 minutes ago for exactly this reason, and walked toward him at the angle she had calculated would put her in his line of sight. One of the men in dark suits raised his arm without looking at her and said, "Not now, sweetheart. Mr. Hartwell is busy." Adrian glanced at her for a half second, no more, and Maya saw a flicker of something in his face, something tired and slightly kind, the look of a man who had been told someone was always not the right time. He gave her a small, distracted smile. "Sorry," he said, the words soft and automatic. "Tell catering will be ready for the toasts at 6. And he kept walking. The man in the dark suit closed in beside him, and the 3 of them moved past her without slowing, and Maya stood there with her folded napkin and watched them go. She was not embarrassed. She was not surprised. She had known the first time would not work. The first time was almost never the time. She turned around and walked back to the tent, and her mother said, "What are you up to, Maya May?" Which was what her mother called her when she suspected she was up to something. And Maya said, "Just looking at the flowers, Mama." And her mother gave her the look that meant, "I do not believe you, but I do not have time to ask." And Maya went back to plating tarts. The second time was 12:15, and Adrian Hartwell was crossing the courtyard alone, on his way from the carriage house back to the main residence to change into his wedding suit. Maya stepped out from the path that led to the catering tent and said, very clearly, "Mr. Hartwell, I need to talk to you about your wedding." Adrian stopped. He looked down at her. Really looked this time. He saw a small girl in a clean apron, hair in 2 braids, standing very still and looking at him the way his grandmother used to look at him when he had done something he was about to be told the truth about. "What's your name?" he said. "Maya, sir. My mother is making your desserts." "Ah." He smiled, and the smile was real, and it was also the smile of a man who had decided what kind of conversation this was going to be before he heard the next sentence. "Is everything all right with the desserts? Is your mother needing something?" "No, sir. It's not about the desserts." He waited. Maya took a breath. She had practiced this in the tent 3 times in different orders. She had decided she would not say your bride is lying to you, because that was the kind of sentence an adult would dismiss in 3 seconds, and she would never get a 4th. She had decided she would say something specific, something that would make him stop and ask a question, because once a person asked a question, they were already listening. "Sir," she said, "this morning at 6:43, your bride was on the South Terrace on a black phone, talking to a person about the foundation paperwork for the school in Newark. She said you weren't going to look at it. She said the transfers happen automatically next Tuesday. She said you trust her, and that's the whole point." Adrian Hartwell did not move. For a long second, He did not move at all, and Maya could see something very small happen in his face, something at the corner of his mouth, the kind of tiny adjustment a person makes when a sentence has hit a place inside them they had thought was sealed. Then he closed his face. She watched him do it. It was like watching a door swing shut. "Maya," he said, and his voice was kind, the careful kindness that adults use when they have already decided not to believe a child. "Maya, sweetheart, listen to me. I know you and your mother are working very hard today. I know it's hot, and it's long and people are tense. But I need you to understand that what you're describing it's a misunderstanding, all right? Vivian is on the phone all morning, every morning. She runs a foundation. She and I have a foundation. That paperwork is something she and I have been working on together for almost a year. Whatever you heard, it was something taken out of context. Sir, Maya," his voice went a little firmer, the kind of firm a man uses when he is reminding a child she is a child. "Listen, I need you to go back to your mother now. I need you to not repeat this to anyone, all right? Not because I'm angry. I'm not angry, but because today is a very important day, and I don't want anything spoiling it for anyone, especially not for your mother. She's done a beautiful job. I want her to be paid and praised, not pulled into something. Do you understand me?" Maya understood him very well. She understood him the way her mother understood the man who said, "I'd love to," but the budget just isn't there when her mother had finished the work and asked to be paid the rate they had agreed on. She understood him the way her grandmother understood the doctor who had told her grandmother her chest pains were stress when they had been a heart attack. She understood that a kind voice was not the same as a listening voice, and that a man who said, "I'm not angry," was almost always a man who was a little angry. She also understood that he had already decided, in the half second before he closed his face, that what she had said was probably true. He had decided, and then he had decided not to know it. "Yes, sir," Maya said. "I understand." Adrian Hartwell put a hand briefly, lightly, on her shoulder. "Good girl," he said. "Tell your mother the desserts smell wonderful." And he walked past her, toward the residence, and did not look back. Maya stood in the courtyard for a moment longer. Then she walked back to the catering tent. Her mother looked up from a tray of tarts and said, "Baby, your face." And Maya said, "I'm fine, Mama. It's hot." And her mother said, "Sit down a minute. Drink some water." And Maya sat down and drank some water, and she thought. She thought about the black phone. She thought about Kira by the rose hedge. She thought about the photographer's hand on the bride's back. She thought about the foundation paperwork and the word Newark, and she thought about her mother who had cried at a kitchen table reading an article about a school that was supposed to be built in the neighborhood her mother had left at 17, and who was now, at 12:25 in the afternoon on the day of the wedding, plating 400 lemon and lavender tarts on her feet for a woman who was going to take that school away. Maya finished her water. She set the cup down very neatly on the tray. Then she went to find the photographer. His name was Lyndon Marsh, and he was setting up a tripod in the rose garden at 12:40 when Maya walked up to him with a small silver tray balanced on her palms. On the tray were 3 tarts and a folded white napkin and a very small card that read compliments of the kitchen. "Please enjoy." Maya had written the card herself 3 minutes ago in her neatest handwriting. Her mother had not seen her write it. "Sir," Maya said, "the kitchen sent these for you. You've been working since early." Lyndon Marsh looked down at her, surprised, and then pleased, the way a person is pleased when a small, unexpected courtesy lands in the middle of a long day. He was a handsome man in his middle 30s, with the sort of long fingers and faintly bored expression that Maya's mother had taught her to be polite around without trusting. "Aren't you sweet?" he said. "Tell the kitchen thank you." "I will, sir." Maya held the tray a little higher because she had to keep him standing here for 30 more seconds. "My mother said you photographed Miss Vivian for her engagement, too." He took a tart, examined it, took a small bite. "Last September. Long shoot. We did it in Connecticut. That's a long way." "It is." He was already half distracted, looking back at the tripod. "Sir," Maya said, "is your camera the kind that puts the date on the picture?" "My mama has one like that." Lyndon Marsh laughed, a short, surprised laugh, and his eyes came back to her, amused. "Some of them do, yes. Most of mine have metadata. That's like a little hidden file inside each picture that tells you exactly when and where it was taken." "What?" My mama wanted to know if you remember exactly when the engagement shoot was because she's putting together a memory book for the bride and groom, and she wanted to put the engagement date on it. This was a complete lie. Maya had invented it 11 seconds ago. But it was the kind of lie she had learned to tell in the way grown women told lies, calmly, with the lie disguised as something kind. Her mother was not making a memory book. Her mother had no idea Maya was standing in the rose garden talking to the wedding photographer. But Lyndon Marsh smiled because it was a kind question and because he was the kind of man who liked being asked things he knew the answer to. "Tell your mama," he said, "that the shoot was September 14th. We were at the Hartwell estate. The one in Litchfield, not this one. We went up that morning." Was Miss Vivian already engaged then? She was. They'd gotten engaged that August. Oh, Maya tilted her head slightly, the way her grandmother had taught her to tilt it when she wanted to look like she was just curious. "Because my mama said she heard somewhere that you and Miss Vivian actually knew each other before that, like from a long time ago." The smile on Lyndon Marsh's face did not move, but something behind it did. Maya, who had been watching for it, watched it happen. "Your mama heard that, did she?" he said. The amusement was still in his voice, but it had thinned out, the way water thins when it gets too cold to drink. "Yes, sir." She said somebody at the wedding planner's office said it. She thought it was nice. She said it's good when people who already know each other take the pictures, because the pictures come out warmer. Lyndon Marsh took another bite of the tart. He chewed it slowly. "Well, your mama's friend at the wedding planner's office is half right. Vivian and I met about 6 years ago at a gallery thing in New York. We've worked together off and on. Friends, really. That's how she found me when she needed someone for the engagement." "That's nice." "It is. My mama says it's good when friends look out for each other." "Your mama sounds like a smart woman." "Yes, sir, she is." Maya stood there one more half second, holding her empty tray, watching Lyndon Marsh's hand. He had set the half-eaten tart down on the edge of the tripod case. His thumb was tapping the case very lightly, for times a small, unconscious rhythm. "Thank you for your time, sir," Maya said. "I'll let my mama know about September 14th. "You do that, sweetheart." Maya walked away from the rose garden at exactly the speed a small girl walks back to a kitchen with an empty tray, which is to say neither fast nor slow, and which is to say in a way that did not make Lyndon Marsh, watching her go, think anything more than what a polite child. She went around the back of the catering tent and stopped behind the ice chest, where no one could see her, and she took the small napkin out of her apron pocket and unfolded it, and she wrote on it in pencil for things. 1. September 14th engagement shoot. 2. Met 6 years ago, New York gallery. 3. Hugged her too long this morning. 4. His thumb did the tap thing when I asked. She folded a napkin into a small square and put it back in her apron pocket. Then she walked into the tent, and her mother said, "Maya May, where have you been?" And Maya said, "Just walking around, Mama." And her mother said, "Stay close, baby. We've got an hour, and we're going to get slammed." And Maya said, "Yes, Mama," and picked up the small spatula, and she plated tarts. It was 1 o'clock. The wedding was in 3 hours. She was running out of time. She was 9 years old, and the only adult she had told the truth to had patted her shoulder and called her good girl and walked away. She had no proof anyone in the building would accept. She had a black phone she had not seen up close. She had a photographer's tap. She had a hug. She had her own ears. She knew it was not enough. If this story has found you, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story from Bound Hearts. The best ones are still coming, and the people who watch to the end are exactly the ones who need to hear them. But she also knew something else. The way her grandmother had known things. The wedding was 3 hours away, and the bride was about to make a mistake. People who had been winning for a long time always made mistakes near the end because they stopped being careful. Vivian had been careful for 2 years. Today she was getting tired. Maya had seen it in her on the terrace at 6:43. The voice that had said he is so desperate to be loved that he will sign whatever I put in front of him had been the voice of a person who was almost done pretending. Maya was going to be there when she stopped pretending. She just had to be in the right place. She just had to be ready. She just had to find one more thing first, One piece of evidence specific enough that even a man who had decided not to know the truth would not be able to keep not knowing it. And she thought she knew where that piece of evidence was. She thought it was on the black phone. The black phone was not in Vivian's room. Maya had been sure of that since this morning. A woman did not stand on a south terrace at 6:43 in her silk robe, holding a phone, if that phone was something she kept where her fiancé might see it. The phone lived somewhere else. The phone lived with Kira. Maya had been watching Kira all morning the way her grandmother had taught her to watch a thing, without staring, without leaning in, just keeping the thing inside the edge of her vision and letting the pattern come up by itself. By 1:15 in the afternoon, Maya had a pattern. Kira went into the white tent on the east lawn, the bridal preparation tent, where Vivian's hair and makeup people had been working since 10, and Kira came out of it. Every 20 minutes or so, she came out, walked to the gardener's shed at the edge of the property, stood in the small shadow at its side for 2 or 3 minutes with her back to the lawn, and walked back. Each time she came back, she was holding a clipboard a little differently than when she had left. The clipboard was not the point. The point was the shed. Maya finished her tray. She told her mother she was going to the bathroom in the staff trailer at the back of the property. Her mother said, "Don't dawdle, baby, we've got an hour." Maya said, "Yes, Mama," and she walked, not toward the staff trailer, but along the line of catering vans, around the back of the rose hedge, behind the carriage house, and out toward the gardener's shed by the long way, the way that nobody used because it took twice as long and went through a stretch of grass nobody had bothered to mow down to wedding grass length. The shed was small and old. It had been built before the Hartwell family had bought the estate, before the estate had been an estate at all, and nobody had renovated it because nobody needed to. The gardeners used it for tools. The door was a wooden one with a latch. There was a small window on the side facing the rose hedge. Maya did not go to the door. Maya went to the window, which was almost exactly her height, and she crouched below it, and she waited. At 1:22, Kira came around the corner with the clipboard. Maya did not breathe big. She did not move. She watched through the bottom corner of the window as Kira unlatched the door, stepped inside, pulled the door most of the way shut behind her, and reached up to a small shelf above the workbench. From the shelf, Kira took down a tin, an old paint tin, the kind with a lid that lifted off, and she set the tin on the workbench, and she opened it, and from inside the tin she took the black phone. Maya saw it. She saw the phone come out of the tin, and she saw Kira turn it on, and she saw Kira's thumb scroll the screen, and she saw Kira's mouth move silently as she read whatever was on it. Kira read for 40 seconds. Then she typed something, a short something, 4 or 5 words. Then she put the phone back in the tin, put the lid back on, put the tin back on the shelf, and walked out, latching the door behind her. Maya counted to 120 after Kira was gone, the way her grandmother had taught her. Count slow, baby, count past the part where you think it's safe, because the part where you think it's safe is the part where you get caught. Then she stood up, walked around to the door, lifted the latch, and went inside. The shed smelled like old soil and motor oil. The workbench was wooden and scarred. The tin was on the shelf, exactly where Kira had put it. Maya was tall enough to reach the shelf if she stood on the small, overturned bucket in the corner, which she did. She lifted the tin down. She sat on the workbench. She lifted the lid. The phone was inside, still warm. Maya did not pick it up. She had decided, walking out from the catering tent, that she was not going to take it, because if she took it, Kira would notice within the hour, and the wedding planners would search every staff member on the property, and her mother would lose her job, and Maya would lose any chance of being believed about anything. She was not going to take the phone. She was going to look at it. She picked it up. She pressed the button on the side. The screen lit up. There was no passcode. Of course there wasn't. The phone was kept in a tin in a shed. The lock was the shed. The screen showed a messaging app. The app was open to a conversation with a contact saved only as the letter L. Maya scrolled up. She scrolled up slowly because her hands were a little shaky and because she was reading and her reading was not as fast as a grown person's and because every few seconds she stopped and listened for footsteps outside the shed. The messages went back 6 months. Maya read them in the order they had come. She read the ones from 3 months ago that said, After the wedding, the joint accounts are open and the foundation transfers go through automatically Tuesday. She read the ones from 2 months ago that said, he hasn't asked one question about the school in Newark. He's going to sign whatever I put in front of him. He literally said last night he trusts me with it. Can you believe him? She read the one from 6 weeks ago that said, Lyndon flies in Saturday. Tell him to behave at the wedding. No looking at me in front of Adrian. She read the one from yesterday that said 24 hours. She read the one from this morning, 6:51 a.m., 7 minutes after the call on the terrace, that said told him not to worry. Adrian is exactly what he looks like. And she read the one from Elle from this morning, 6:53 a.m., that said good girl. One more day. Tuesday, we have everything. Maya stood very still in the shed. She was 9 years old, but she had been raised by a woman who had been cheated and by a grandmother who had been cheated before that. And she knew what she was looking at. She was looking at a plan. She was looking at a plan that had a calendar attached to it. And the calendar said Tuesday, and Tuesday was 4 days away. She thought very quickly about taking a photograph of the messages with her own, except she did not have her own phone. She was 9. Her mother had said maybe when she was 12. She thought about copying the messages onto a piece of paper. She had a pencil in her apron and a folded napkin. She did not have time to copy 6 months of messages. She thought about taking the phone. She decided very quickly no, not yet. Not because she was afraid, but because if she took it now, Kira would notice within 40 minutes, and 40 minutes from now was 2 o'clock. And 2 o'clock was the moment when Vivian's hair would be finished and the photographer would be doing the bridal preparation portraits and the property would be at its most watched. If she took it now, somebody would search the catering tent. Her mother. Her mother would be the first person they searched. So Maya did the only thing left to do. She memorized. She read the most recent 10 messages 3 times each in the order they had been sent, and she said them under her breath, and she read the timestamps 3 times each. Then she scrolled up and read the message from 3 months ago about the foundation transfers automatically going through Tuesday 3 more times. She read the contact, L, and she pressed the contact, and she saw the phone number, and she said the phone number to herself 5 times until it sat in her head the way her own address sat in her head. Then she put the phone back in the tin, exactly the way Kira had placed it, with the screen face down, because that was how it had been when she had taken it out. She put the lid back on. She put the tin back on the shelf, in the same spot, with the same edge facing forward. She got down off the bucket. She put the bucket back in the corner. She listened at the door for 15 seconds. She lifted the latch. She walked out. She closed the door. She latched it. She walked back to the catering tent the long way, past the line of catering vans, around the back of the rose hedge, and her mother said, Maya May, where have you been? And Maya said, I got lost looking for the bathroom, Mama. And her mother said, sit down, drink some water, Maya. I mean it, you were looking peaky. And Maya sat down and drank some water. And while she drank, she wrote on the napkin, in her smallest pencil, the phone number of L. It was 1:38. The wedding was in 2 hours and 22 minutes. She tried Adrian Hartwell again at 1:55. He was in the library this time. The library was on the ground floor of the main residence, and it had French doors that opened onto a small private garden, and the door from the hallway was guarded by one of the men in dark suits, the same one who had said not now, sweetheart, 3 hours ago. Maya knew this because she had walked past the library twice on errands her mother had not actually given her, just to see who was where. She walked up to the man in the dark suit with another folded napkin in her hand and a small card. The card read, in her best handwriting, for M.R. Hartwell, private, from Maya, who talked to you in the courtyard. She handed it to the man. Sir, she said, would you please give this to Mr. Hartwell? It's about something he asked me earlier. The man looked at her. Then he looked at the card. Then he looked at her again. Mr. Hartwell asked you something? Yes, sir. What did he ask you? He asked me to think about something and come back when I had thought about it. The man considered this. He was, Maya could see, the kind of man who had been told 1,000 times to keep people away from Mr. Hartwell, and who had also been told, somewhere underneath those 1,000 times, that you did not turn away a child carrying a card. He took the card. He looked at it once more. He said, wait here, and he went into the library. Maya waited. 20 seconds. 40. A minute. The door opened. Adrian Hartwell stood in the doorway. He looked at her. He looked tired in a way Maya had not seen on a grown man before. Tired the way her mother looked tired when she was about to cry, but had decided not to. "Maya," he said. "Sir." He stood aside. "Come in." The library smelled like books and lemon polish. There was a very old desk in the middle, and on the desk there was a glass of water, untouched, and a folder tied with a black ribbon. Maya did not look at the folder, but she filed it. Adrian closed the door behind her, softly, not all the way, leaving it ajar by an inch the way men sometimes do when they want to be alone with a child without being alone with a child. "Maya," he said. "Sweetheart, I told you this morning that you needed to stop. I know what you told me, sir." He stopped. There was something in her voice he had not heard the first time. Or maybe he had heard it and had decided not to. She watched him decide, this time, to hear it. "All right," he said. He did not sit down. He stayed standing, his hand on the back of the chair behind the desk. "Tell me." Quickly. Maya took out the napkin from her apron pocket. She did not unfold it. She held it in her hand the way she had seen her mother hold a receipt at a counter, when the price on the receipt was wrong and her mother was about to be polite about it. "Sir," she said, "your bride's assistant Kira keeps a black phone in the gardener's shed. It is in a paint tin on the top shelf. She goes to it about every 20 minutes. The phone has no passcode. The most recent person she texted is saved as the letter L. The number is," and she said the number she had memorized. Adrian Hartwell did not move. "This morning," Maya said, "your bride was on that phone on the South Terrace at 6:43. She said you weren't going to look at the foundation paperwork and that the transfers happen automatically Tuesday." After she went inside, Elle texted back at 6:53. The message said, "Good girl, one more day. Tuesday we have everything." He did not move. "There are messages going back 6 months, sir. There's one from 6 weeks ago that says Lyndon flies in Saturday. Tell him to behave at the wedding. No looking at me in front of Adrian. There's one from yesterday that says 24 hours. The photographer who is here today is named Lyndon Marsh. He told me he and your bride met 6 years ago at a gallery. He hugged her this morning when he arrived, and she kept her hand on his back." She paused. "I'm not making this up, sir. I am sorry is the day of your wedding. I am sorry I am the one telling you. But I heard her, and I read the messages, and I did not write any of this down except the phone number because I'm 9 years old, and I knew you would not believe me if I wrote it down because anybody can write anything down. So I memorized it instead, and I am telling you now." Adrian Hartwell sat down. He did not seem to decide to sit down. His legs simply bent, and he was sitting. He looked at her, and Maya could see him doing a thing she had seen her mother do. The thing where you take everything you know and you stack it next to the new thing, and you wait to see whether the new thing fits or whether the new thing knocks the stack over. She watched him stack. She watched his eyes move across her face the way her mother's eyes moved across a contract. She watched him land, finally, on the napkin in her hand. "What's on the napkin?" he asked very quietly. She unfolded it. She held it out. He took it. He read it. The 4 lines from the Rose Garden, September 14th engagement shoot. "Met 6 years ago, near your gallery. Hugged her too long this morning." His thumb did the tap thing when I asked. And below those 4 lines, the phone number she had written underneath in pencil, so small he had to bring it close to his eyes. He set the napkin on the desk, very carefully, like it was wet. He said, "You said the photographer's thumb did the tap thing when you asked him about Vivian." "Yes, sir." "What is the tap thing?" "It is the thing my mama does when somebody asks her a question she does not want to answer truthfully. Her thumb taps a tabletop or a glass 4 times, very fast, very small. People who lie a lot do it. She told me to watch for it." He looked at her for a long second. "Maya," he said, "is your mother in the catering tent right now?" "Yes, sir." "Does she know you're here?" "No, sir." "Does she know any of this?" "No, sir." "Why not?" Maya looked at him very steadily. "Because she would lose her job, sir. The wedding planner would tell everybody she is the kind of cook who lets her child go around saying things about brides. And we need this job. My mama has been baking for 2 days without sleep. So I cannot tell her until I am sure you believe me. Because if you do not believe me, my mama still has to plate 400 tarts in the next hour. And I do not want her crying while she does it." Adrian Hartwell put his hand over his mouth. He sat like that for almost 10 seconds. Maya did not say anything. Her grandmother had taught her about silences too. Some silences, baby, are the silence of a thing being decided, and you do not interrupt that silence, you let it finish. When he took his hand away from his mouth, his face had changed. Not much, just at the edges. His mouth was a different mouth than it had been 3 minutes ago. Maya, he said, I need you to stay right here. I need you to sit in that chair. I'm going to step out of this room for 2 minutes, and I'm going to come back, and then we're going to do something. Will you stay in that chair? Yes, sir. Do not leave this room. No, sir. He stood up. He walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. And then he turned and he looked at her one more time, and he said something very quietly, almost to himself. You came back twice. Yes, sir. After I dismissed you. Yes, sir. Why? Maya thought about that. Because my mama always says, she said, that the first time a person tells you the truth and you don't listen, you only hurt them. The second time, you start hurting yourself. Adrian Hartwell looked at her for a long second more. Then he went out. He came back 90 seconds later with 2 people. One was the man in the dark suit who had been standing outside the library door. Maya did not know his name yet, but his name was Reggie Calhoun, and he had been the head of Adrian Hartwell's personal security for 11 years. The other was a woman in a navy suit Maya had never seen before, taller than Adrian, with reading glasses pushed up into her hair. This was Daniel Mercer's deputy, an attorney named Priya Saraff, who had been in the residence since 11 that morning to handle anything that might come up before the ceremony. Maya, Adrian said, this is Mr. Calhoun. He works for me. This is Ms. Saraff. She's one of my lawyers. I'm going to ask you to tell them what you told me. All of it. Slowly. Take your time. Maya looked at the 3 adults. Sir, she said, the wedding starts in 1 hour and 40 minutes. I know. My mama is in the catering tent. I know. If I tell them everything, you'll have to do something. And Miss Vivian will know that I told. Adrian looked at her. Reggie Calhoun looked at her. Priya Saraff looked at her, and Priya was the one who answered. Sweetheart, Priya said, kneeling so her face was at the level of Maya's face. If you tell us everything, we will do something, and we will make sure your mother is not the person who gets hurt by it. I promise you that. I am the kind of lawyer who can promise that, because part of my job today is to make sure nobody gets blamed for things that aren't theirs. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Then tell us, slowly. Maya told them. She told them about the South Terrace at 643. She told them about the silk robe and the black phone and the words exactly what he looks like and so desperate to be loved that he will sign whatever I put in front of him. She told them about Kira and the gardener's shed. She told them about the paint tin and the shelf and the bucket she had stood on. She told them about the messages she had read. She recited the messages she had memorized in order, and Priya wrote them down on a yellow legal pad. She gave them the phone number for Elle, and Priya wrote that down too. She told them about Linden Marsh, the September 14th engagement shoot, the gallery 6 years ago, the hug, the hand at the small of the back, the 4-tap thumb on the tripod case. When she was done, the room was quiet. Reggie Calhoun said, Sir, I'd like to walk to the gardener's shed. Adrian Hartwell said walk. Reggie left. Priya Saraff said, Sir, I'd like permission to call the Foundation's outside counsel in New York and put a hold on the Tuesday transfer schedule before anyone else makes a phone call out of this property. I can do it from this room. It will take 8 minutes. Do it. She picked up the phone on the desk. Adrian Hartwell stood there. He looked at Maya for a moment, and she saw that the door inside him had opened. Not all the way, not yet, but enough that the buzz he had been mistaking for nerves all morning had become something he could finally name. Maya, he said, I owe you an apology. Sir, you don't? I do. I told you this morning that you were a child who had misunderstood. I called you sweetheart. I patted your shoulder. I sent you back to your mother. That was the second time today I did not look at something I should have looked at. The first time was 8 months ago when I started signing things Vivian handed me without reading them. So I owe you an apology, and I am giving it to you now, and I will give it to you again later when this is over. Maya did not know what to do with this. She had been ready for him to be angry, ready for him to be afraid, ready for him to say nothing. She had not been ready for him to apologize. "Yes, sir," she said. He almost smiled. It was a tired smile, and it did not last long. "Stay in this chair, Maya. I have to go and do something." "Yes, sir." He went out. Reggie Calhoun came back from the gardener's shed at 2:14 in the afternoon. He came back holding a paint tin, with the lid sealed shut, and he came back without having been seen by anyone except a single groundskeeper who was paid by Reggie's company directly and who had, when he saw Reggie, simply nodded and gone back to clipping a hedge that did not need clipping. Reggie did not open the tin in the library. He gave it to Priya Saraf, who sat on the desk next to her legal pad, and Priya, wearing thin cotton gloves she had taken from a drawer in the desk, because Priya was the kind of lawyer who carried thin cotton gloves, opened the tin, removed the phone, and turned it on. She read for 90 seconds without speaking. Then she looked up at Adrian Hartwell, who had come back into the library 4 minutes earlier. "Adrian," Priya said, "this child told you the truth." He nodded once. "She told you the truth," in her exact words. "The most recent message from Elle this morning is good girl. One more day, Tuesday, we have everything." The message from yesterday is 24 hours. The conversation goes back to January. There's a photograph attached to a message from March. "I'm not opening it now." That is captioned by Vivian, the man who thinks he's marrying me. The message after that one says, "Love you. See you Tuesday after." Adrian Hartwell sat down in the chair behind the desk. He had not eaten since breakfast. He had not slept properly in 3 weeks. He looked, for a moment, like a much older man. "Priya," he said, "what is the legal situation if I cancel the wedding 90 minutes before the ceremony?" "Messy," Priya said. "Public. Press. 240 guests. But survivable. The prenup you signed protect your assets. The foundation paperwork is what we have to stop, and I have stopped it. The Tuesday transfers are frozen as of 7 minutes ago, and I have a partner on a plane in New York to make sure no one moves them by hand on Monday. Vivian does not know that yet. Vivian does not know that yet. Lyndon Marsh is on the property. Lyndon Marsh is on the property. And Kira. Adrian was quiet. Reggie Calhoun, who had been standing by the door, said, "Sir, what do you want to do?" Adrian looked at him. Then he looked at the desk. Then he looked at Maya, who was still in her chair, still very still, watching him the way a child watches a parent decide a thing that is going to change the day. "I want to do it in front of them," Adrian said. Reggie waited. "All of them," Adrian said. "She wanted 240 witnesses for our wedding. She's going to get 240 witnesses for what I have to say to her instead. I'm not going to ambush her in a back room. I'm not going to walk out of a library and tell my driver to take her away. She built this lie in front of my entire life, and she's going to be told she has been caught in front of my entire life, including her parents, including her sister, including Lyndon, who will be standing 10 feet away with a camera around his neck." Priya looked at him for a long second. "Adrian, as your lawyer, I would prefer something quieter. As my lawyer, I'm sure you would. As the man who almost signed away a school in Newark, I want it loud." Priya nodded slowly. "Then we structure it. You don't speak first. You let her arrive at the arch. You let the officiant begin. And then, and only then, you stop the ceremony, and you say one specific sentence, and we have the evidence ready to hand to her parents and to her sister in a folder that I will have prepared by 3:30. You do not lose your temper. You do not yell. You say what needs to be said, and you let the room do the rest. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Do you want Maya there?" Adrian looked at Maya. Maya looked at Adrian. "I want Maya there," Adrian said. "If Maya wants to be there, and if her mother says yes." Maya thought about her mother. Her mother, who had been on her feet since 5:30 in the morning. Her mother, who was going to find out, in the next hour, that her 9-year-old daughter had spent the morning reading messages on a phone hidden in a paint tin. "I want my mama to know first, sir," Maya said, "before anything else happens. I don't want her finding out at the same time as everybody else. She's been working too hard for that." Adrian almost smiled again. "Mr. Calhoun," he said, "would you please walk Maya to the catering tent and ask her mother if she could come to the library for a few minutes? Tell her her daughter has been very brave, and we owe both of them an explanation." "Yes, sir." Reggie offered Maya his hand. Maya took it. She walked out of the library with the head of Adrian Hartwell's personal security, her small fingers in his enormous one, and walked across the courtyard toward the catering tent, where her mother was about to find out what kind of day this had really been. Janelle Ellison did not cry when Maya told her. That was not the kind of woman Janelle was. Janelle listened, with her hand on her daughter's shoulder, sitting on a folding chair in a small office off the library because Adrian and Priya and Reggie had cleared the room and given them privacy. And when Maya was finished, Janelle said only, "Baby, you read messages on a phone that wasn't yours." "Yes, Mama." "You went into a shed by yourself." "Yes, Mama." "You talked to a grown man twice after he told you to stop." "Yes, Mama." Janelle looked at her daughter for a long second. "Maya May," she said, "if any of this had been wrong, if any one piece of it had been you being a child who got something twisted up, we would be packing up the van right now, and we would be never working in this town again." "I know, Mama, and you did it anyway." "I had to, Mama. He was going to give them the school." Janelle put both her hands on her daughter's face. Her hands were warm, and they smelled faintly like lemon and lavender, the way they had smelled for 2 days, and she looked at her daughter the way a mother looks at a daughter when the daughter has done a thing the mother is not sure whether to be proud of or terrified by, and has decided to be both. "Okay, baby," Janelle said. "Okay, we tell the truth. We tell the whole truth. And then we let those people in there figure out what to do with it, because that is their job, not ours." "But Maya, listen to me. Listen. After today, no more sheds. No more phones that are not yours. No more talking to grown men twice when they tell you to stop the first time. You hear me?" "Yes, Mama." "You hear me?" "Yes, Mama. I hear you." Janelle pulled her daughter in her chest and held her there, hard, for one long second, and then she let her go, and she stood up, and she smoothed her apron, and she said, "All right. Take me back in there. Let's see what these people are doing." By 3:30 in the afternoon, the library had become a war room. Priya Saraff had assembled 3 folders. The first was a printed copy of every relevant message between Vivian Cole and Lyndon Marsh, pulled from the black phone, in chronological order, with the timestamps in bold. The second was a printed copy of the foundation paperwork Adrian had signed 6 days ago, with the relevant clauses highlighted in yellow. The clauses that made Vivian co-trustee, the clauses that authorized the Tuesday transfers, the clauses that, if not stopped, would have moved $24 million out of the school in Newark and into accounts Vivian controlled. The third was a single page, signed by Priya and notarized by a notary who had been on the property for the wedding and had been quietly redirected to the library for 10 minutes, certifying that the foundation transfers were now legally frozen pending review. Reggie Calhoun had positioned 3 of his men at the perimeter of the property. Lyndon Marsh had been politely informed by a young woman with a clipboard that he was needed in the Rose Garden at 3:55 for a quick lighting check, which would put him exactly 40 feet from the wedding arch when the ceremony began. Kira had been politely informed by a different young woman with a different clipboard that Vivian wanted her in the bridal tent at 3:50 for final pre-ceremony notes, which would put her exactly 35 feet from the wedding arch on the other side. Both of them now had a Calhoun man within 10 feet of them, posing as wedding staff. Vivian Cole had not been informed of anything. Vivian Cole was, at this moment, having her veil pinned in by a hairdresser who had been told that Mr. Hartwell's instructions were to take his time and not, under any circumstances, hurry. The string quartet was tuning. The guests were arriving. The afternoon sun was on the lawn. The 240 white chairs were filled. At 3:55, Adrian Hartwell stood in the side hallway of the main residence with Maya Ellison and Janelle Ellison and Priya Saraff, and Reggie Calhoun handed Adrian a small folded card. "Sir," Reggie said, "this is the order of operations." Adrian read it. He nodded once. He looked at Maya. "Maya," he said, "I'm going to walk out there in 2 minutes. The officiant is going to begin. Vivian is going to walk down the aisle. She's going to reach the arch. The officiant is going to ask if anyone has any reason this marriage should not proceed. And I'm going to step forward, and I'm going to say one sentence. Yes, sir. After I say that sentence, things are going to happen. Some of them are going to be loud. Some of them are going to be very public. Your mother is going to stand at the back of the lawn with Mr. Calhoun, and you're going to stand with her. You're not going to be on the lawn alone. You're not going to speak. You're going to watch. Is that all right? Yes, sir. After it is over, you and your mother and I are going to sit in the library for an hour, and we're going to have a very long conversation. And I'm going to tell you something I have already decided. Do you want me to tell you now or later? Maya looked at him. Later, sir, she said. After. Mama is tired. Let's get through this part first. Adrian Hartwell looked at her for a long second. You are, he said quietly, the most clear-headed person I have spoken to in a year. Yes, sir. He almost laughed. It was a small laugh, and it did not last, but it was the first thing that had felt like a real laugh out of him since the morning. He turned. He walked toward the lawn. The string quartet began. The string quartet played the piece Vivian Cole had chosen 6 months ago. The 240 guests stood. The officiant, a silver-haired man Adrian had known since college, took his place at the arch and adjusted his stole. Adrian Hartwell walked out from the side of the residence and took his place at the front, and he did not look like a man who had spent the last 2 hours in a library deciding to end his own wedding. He looked like a man getting married. He had been told by Priya that he had to look like a man getting married right up to the second he didn't, and Adrian Hartwell had built a life on knowing how to look like the thing the room expected him to be. The doors at the back of the lawn opened. Vivian Cole walked down the aisle in a dress that had cost more than the house Maya had grown up in. Her father walked beside her. Her veil was pinned in a way that caught the afternoon light. She was smiling. Maya saw from where she stood at the very back of the lawn with her mother and Reggie Calhoun, smiling at Adrian the way she had smiled in the photograph in the briefing folder, the smile that had looked good in magazines. Maya watched her get closer to the arch. She watched the smile not change. She watched Vivian reach Adrian and let go of her father's arm and take Adrian's hands the way the rehearsal had taught her to take them, and she watched Adrian let her. The officiant said the opening words. The lawn was very quiet, the kind of quiet a wedding produces, 240 people holding still on purpose, not breathing big, the way Maya had not breathed big behind the peonies 12 hours earlier. The officiant said, if any person here knows of any reason these two should not be joined in marriage, let them speak now, or forever hold their peace. It was a line nobody in a wedding ever stopped for. It was a line that existed for the rhythm of the ceremony, like a pause for breath. The officiant began to draw the next breath that would carry him into the next sentence. Adrian Hartwell let go of Vivian's hands. He took one step back from the arch. He turned, not to the officiant but to the guests. He said, I do. It took the lawn 3 full seconds to understand what he had said. Vivian understood faster than most of them. Her smile did not move, but the muscles around her eyes did, very slightly, the way the muscles around Lyndon Marsh's mouth had moved in the rose garden when Maya had asked the question about September 14th. I do, Adrian said again louder. I know a reason these two should not be joined in marriage. The reason is that Vivian Cole has been in a relationship with another man for at least 6 years. The reason is that she and that man have been planning, for at least 6 months, to use my marriage to her as the legal mechanism by which she would gain co-trustee authority over the foundation that funds the new public school in Newark, and that they would, on Tuesday morning, transfer $24 million out of that foundation into accounts she controls. The reason is that I have, in a folder in my hand, the messages between them, the photographs they have sent each other, the bank routing numbers they were going to use, and a notarized statement from my attorney that as of 2.5 hours ago, those transfers are legally frozen and will not happen Tuesday or any other day. The lawn had gone perfectly still. Vivian Cole said, very calmly, Adrian, sweetheart, what are you doing? I'm not getting married today, Adrian said. I'm not getting married to you any day. I am, in approximately 90 seconds, walking off this lawn with the only people on this property today who told me the truth, and I'm going to spend the rest of the afternoon making sure that the school in Newark gets built on schedule with every dollar that was ever promised to it. Vivian's father, who had been standing near the second row, said, Adrian, son, what is happening? Sir, Adrian said, I am sorry. I am genuinely sorry that I'm telling you this in front of all these people. I considered telling you in private. I decided that would be a kindness to your daughter that your daughter has not earned. I will speak with you afterward in the library with my attorney present, and I will show you everything I have. and you could decide for yourself what you believe. He turned back to Vivian. The photographer, he said, is Lyndon Marsh. He is 40 feet to your left. He is currently being kept where he is by a man named Kevin who works for me. Your assistant, Kira, is 35 feet to your right. She's being kept where she is by a man named Andre who also works for me. The black phone Kira kept in a paint tin in the gardener's shed is in a sealed bag in my attorney's hand. I'm not making any of this up. I do not have a tabloid imagination. I have evidence. I have it because someone walked up to me 4 hours ago and told me you were lying, and I told her she was a child who had misunderstood, and she came back 90 minutes later anyway, and the second time I listened. Vivian looked, for the first time, away from Adrian. She looked toward the back of the lawn. Her eyes moved across the rows of guests, across the catering tent, across the arch, and they found Maya. Maya, standing next to her mother at the very back, holding her mother's hand, did not look away. Vivian Cole, who had been winning for 6 years and had been almost done pretending, looked at the 9-year-old girl in a clean apron and 2 careful braids who had read her messages in a paint tin and walked into a library twice. And Vivian understood, in 1 clean second, exactly who had ended her. She did not speak. She did not have to. Her face stopped pretending. The lawn saw it stop. 238 people who had been at her engagement party and her bridal shower and her 3 pre-wedding dinners watched her face stop pretending. And from that second forward, none of them were ever going to be able to remember her any other way. Reggie Calhoun stepped onto the lawn from the side. So did Kevin, with Lyndon Marsh's elbow politely in his hand. So did Andre, with Kira's. They did not hurry. They did not raise their voices. They walked Vivian Cole and Lyndon Marsh and Kira off the lawn the way wedding planners walk a bride off a lawn when the rain is starting, calm, professional, with a hand at the elbow and an umbrella that is not actually an umbrella. Priya Saroff walked beside them with the 3 folders. Adrian Hartwell stood at the arch alone. He did not look at the guests. He looked at the back of the lawn. He looked at Maya. He raised one hand to her, very small, the way you raise a hand to someone across a room you cannot cross. Maya, beside her mother, raised her hand back. The library, by 5:30 in the afternoon, smelled like coffee. Mrs. Turner, who was not a real character in this story and whom Maya had never met because Mrs. Turner belonged to a different house in a different city, was not there. But Reggie Calhoun's wife, whose name was Denise, had been called in to bring sandwiches, and Denise had also brought juice for Maya, real juice from a glass bottle, and had put in a wine glass because she said a child who had done what Maya had done deserved a wine glass. Janelle Ellison sat on the leather couch. She had not let go of Maya's hand for 40 minutes. Adrian sat across from them in the chair behind the desk, his tie loosened, his jacket on the back of the chair. Priya was at the other end of the room on the phone, speaking quietly to a partner in New York about Tuesday. Reggie was outside the door. The 240 guests had been asked, very politely, to leave, and most of them had left. The catering company had been paid in full for the entire day, plus a 30% gratuity, which Adrian had instructed Priya to send out before anyone in the catering company could think to wonder whether they would be paid at all. Mrs. Ellison, Adrian said. Janelle, please. Janelle, I owe your daughter a great deal. I owe you a great deal. You don't owe me anything, Mr. Hartwell. My daughter did what she did. I didn't do it. You raised her. Janelle looked at him. Yes, she said, after a moment. I did. There is a school, Adrian said, in Newark. It is going to be built. The groundbreaking is in August. It is going to have a culinary program for high school students who want to go into the food industry, but don't have the family money for culinary school later. I had not finalized who would run that program. I'm finalizing it now. Janelle said, Mr. Hartwell, I want you to run it. The room was quiet. I'm not handing it to you, Adrian said. I'm offering it to you. There will be a hiring process. There will be a panel. You will be interviewed by the foundation's education director and by 2 members of the school board in Newark, and you will get the position because you are qualified for it and because I will not be in the room while they decide. But I'm telling you today that I want you to apply for it, and I want you to know that the offer comes from me, and I want you to know why. Janelle's hand was still in Maya's. Maya felt it tighten. Mama, Maya said quietly, Hush, baby. Janelle looked at Adrian for a long second. She was not the kind of woman who cried in front of strange rich men. She had decided that years ago, in a kitchen in Newark, while reading a different man's letter about a different broken promise, and she had not changed her mind since. She did not change her mind now, but her eyes were wet, and she did not bother to hide that they were, and she said, very evenly, I will apply for the position, Mr. Hartwell. If they choose me, I will run that program the way it deserves to be run. If they don't, you will not hear me complain. That is how this is going to work. That is exactly how it is going to work. Janelle nodded once. And Mr. Hartwell, she said, you understand that what my daughter did today, she did because the school was in Newark. She did because I cried at our kitchen table when I read about it. She did this for a neighborhood, not for a check. So when the program runs, it runs for those kids. It does not run for a press release. Janelle, Adrian said, I have not been spoken to that directly in 2 years. The last person who spoke to me that directly was a woman in a silk robe at 6 in the morning, and it turned out she was lying. So I would like to ask you, formally, if you would also be willing to sit on the Foundation's advisory board, in addition to running the culinary program, because the Foundation has a long history of being told what it wants to hear by people who want something, and it appears to me that you are the opposite of that. You'll have to pay me for that one too, Mr. Hartwell. I assumed so, and I have a daughter who needs picking up from school sometimes. The Foundation has very flexible meeting hours. Janelle looked at him, and for the first time all day, she almost laughed. All right, Mr. Hartwell. Adrian. All right, Adrian. We'll talk. Maya, who had been quiet through most of this, finally spoke. Mr. Hartwell. Yes, Maya. You said earlier you wanted to tell me something. After. I said let's do it later. I did say that. It is later, sir. Adrian looked at her. He looked at her the way a man looks at a child who has, in one afternoon, dismantled the plan of his life and built a better one in its place. And he tried to say what he had been planning to say, and he found that the thing he had been planning to say was not big enough. So he said something smaller, which was bigger. Maya, he said, I have been a man for 20 years who decided that the people around me were either people I employed or people I was about to. That was the only category I had for human beings. I have been told by my therapist, by my mother, by 2 ex-girlfriends, and by my college roommate that this was a problem. I did not believe them. I believed them in the way a man believes a doctor who tells him to eat better, politely, briefly, and then never again. I want you to know that today, 1:55, when you walked into this library the second time, you spoke to me the way nobody has spoken to me in 20 years, and I did not employ you, and you were not about to ask me for anything. You walked in here because someone you did not know was about to be hurt, and you did not want him to be hurt. That is the kind of person I had stopped believing existed. I'm not going to thank you with a check. I'm not going to thank you with a scholarship. I have already discussed with your mother that anything for your future is something she and I will figure out together as adults, and you do not have to think about any of that. I am thanking you, instead, by telling you that for the rest of my life, when I am about to sign something I have not read, I'm going to think about a 9-year-old girl who came back twice, and I'm going to read it. That is what you have done. You have made me a man who reads what he signs. There is no number in any account that is worth more than that. Maya thought about this for a long second. Sir, she said, that is a nice thing to say. Thank you, Maya. But you have to do it, not just say it. My grandma always says people say things at funerals and weddings that they don't do on Tuesdays. Adrian Hartwell put his hand over his mouth, the same way he had put it over his mouth in this room 4 hours ago. And this time, when he took it down, he was almost smiling. Your grandmother sounds like a woman I would like to meet. She passed 2 years ago, sir. Then I am sorry I did not get to. Me too, sir. Janelle squeezed her daughter's hand, and Maya squeezed back, and the 3 of them sat in the library while the long afternoon turned into evening and the lawn outside emptied of chairs and cameras and string quartets. And somewhere in New York, on a Tuesday that had not yet come, a school in Newark stayed exactly where it was supposed to be. A year later, almost to the day, Maya Ellison stood in a kitchen. The kitchen was new. It smelled of new wood and new paint, and the stainless steel counters had not been scratched yet, because nothing had been cooked on them. Her mother stood at the center of the kitchen with a clipboard, talking to a contractor about where the second oven was going to go. The contractor was a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain, and she was being very patient because Janelle Ellison had been very specific. The school had been built on schedule. The culinary program had hired Janelle as its founding director after a panel interview that Janelle later said had been the most nervous she had been since the day Maya was born. The advisory board of the Hartwell Foundation now had a black woman on it for the first time in the foundation's history. And that black woman had also, at her first meeting, asked 4 questions about the foundation's grant disbursement schedule that the foundation's general counsel had not been able to answer in the room and had had to circle back on by email 3 days later, which the rest of the board had found, depending on the board member, either extremely refreshing or extremely uncomfortable. Adria Hartwell came into the kitchen with 2 coffees and a juice. He gave the juice to Maya without asking, because Maya was 10 now and had grown an inch and a half and had started taking herself more seriously, but she still liked apple juice from a glass bottle, and Adrian had remembered. "Maya," he said. "Mr. Hartwell." "Adrian. My mama says I can call you Adrian when I'm 14. Your mama is a difficult negotiator." "Yes, sir." He looked around the kitchen. "Is it what you imagined?" he asked. Maya considered this. She considered the long stainless steel counter and the second oven her mother was arguing for, and the window above the sink that looked out onto a courtyard where, in the spring, the school was going to plant a small herb garden the students would tend themselves. "No, sir," she said. "It is bigger. Bigger is good." "Yes, sir." He almost laughed. He did that more now. Maya had noticed. "Maya," Adrian said. "Yes, sir. There's a girl on this year's intake, a freshman, who reminds me of you. She is in the program because of an essay she wrote about her grandmother. Your mother is very excited about her. I am telling you because I think you should meet her one day when she is more settled, and I think she should meet you because I think it is good for girls who notice things to know other girls who notice things." Maya thought about this. "Yes, sir," she said. "I would like that." He nodded. He looked at her for a long second, the way he had looked at her in the library a year ago after she had said the thing about her mother. And he said, very quietly, the way grown men say things they are still surprised to be saying, "Thank you, Maya." Maya looked up at him. "You're welcome, sir," she said. And she went back to her juice, and her mother went back to arguing about the second oven, and the contractor went back to writing on the clipboard, and the kitchen, which had not yet cooked anything, but which would soon cook a great many things for a great many children whom the world had been ready to overlook, sat in the late afternoon light and waited to be filled. Thank you for staying all the way to the end. The people who finish the whole story are the ones who understand it, and the ones who share it. If this one moved you, the next video on your screen is waiting to do the same. And if you haven't subscribed yet, come back. There's always another child the world underestimated, and we tell those stories here.